Hey guys, Andrarchy here, and today I want to talk about Steemit's real diabolical plan for not just cryptocurrency world domination, but real world domination. And there are two steps that I see that they are doing that is part of their diabolical plan. And of course I'm being sarcastic. I think it's a great plan. This is the first step. And what that first step boils down to is the manufacture of an economic system from scratch. An economic system that is an order of magnitude more efficient than any economic system in the history of the world, in my opinion. In my opinion, that is objectively true. This is the most elegantly designed economic system ever, precisely because it is designed. No other economic system that I know of was ever designed from scratch. Most economic systems evolved over time. Some populations started with a commodity that they would use as money. Over time, the weaknesses of using a commodity as money would win out. There would be financial crises. And then they would develop a new technology, which is called currency, to address those concerns. So like in the US, people used precious metal coins, and then they used the US dollar, which were backed by precious metals, and then eventually, of course, they got rid of the precious metal backing. This system evolved. This system is an infinite series of band-aids. This system is designed from the ground up using the knowledge gained from the failures of all other systems. And each level is designed to ideally serve its function and then work together synergistically to create an efficient whole. Now, I'm not going to say that each one is perfectly designed. But what they've done is created a scenario where as flaws are revealed, they're fixed. And that is remarkably revolutionary, because what typically happens is you create an economic system that adds a level of stability to an economy. And that's great, because once things are stable, people can be productive. And that's best for everybody. You want things to be stable, and you want people to be productive. You want people to be free to express their inherent creativity, produce things of value, and that means people get more out of life. When you create something of value, that means that by purchasing that thing, an individual can generate more wealth for themselves, more success, more fulfillment, more happiness than they expended by purchasing it. When you buy a car, you pay $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 for a car because having that car over the long run will return you much more than that amount. That's what creating value is about. And an economic system that efficiently allocates resources based on the productivity of the individual, their ability to produce things of value, is the best economic system. The ideal economic system distributes resources in perfect proportion to the productivity of the individuals. Period. Steemit is the closest system I've ever seen to doing that. And notice I don't say steam. Steam is just the commodity that backs the system. The system is steam, steam dollars, and steam power. Now, I assume that that's not going to be limited to Steemit in the long run, but as of right now, it's Steemit. And so I think that's a fine kind of bubble to stay in. So you might be asking, okay, well, how does an economic system take over the world? Well, the first step is that if it's a good economic system, if it accomplishes the task that I just stated more effectively than any other economic system, the population will be so productive that they will amass a large amount of wealth. Now, America's system was very good, and Americans were able to amass a large amount of wealth. Now, in addition to that, they had geographical advantages that really came into play after World War II. Our geographical location enabled us to largely stay out of World War II. That, combined with our economic system, enabled us to respond to the end of World War II by leveraging our economic system and our wealth to dollarize the rest of the world, to make the US dollar the reserve currency of the world, the most commonly used currency in the world, the most valued currency in the world, and in so doing, effectively take over the world. We took over the world with economics, and we didn't stop there. Actually, the straw that really broke the Soviet Union's back was when the United States in the 1970s raised the interest rates paid on bonds. That tanked the Soviet economy. That's what forced all the change. It wasn't war. It wasn't even the Cold War. The Cold War was a net loss for everybody. We all spent money on stupid things that we're never going to use. They were making their budgetary decisions based on the assumption that they could borrow money from the United States at 5%. And they were going, all right, we can afford a 5% interest rate. When interest rates got hiked to that high level, they were now stuck in a situation where they had to pay 5 times more to borrow money than they used to, and the governments literally went bankrupt. They couldn't pay for all the stuff they said they were going to pay for, and revolutions started. Actually, in Poland, it was workers' unions who rose up against the Communist Party in the Soviet Union, and the trigger of it all was this economic issue. So let's look at this economic system and see what we're looking at. First, I want to talk about what a commodity is. A commodity is a marketable item produced to satisfy wants and needs. It has no price stabilization mechanism, and it can be used as money if it has the right form factor. An interesting trend that I noticed throughout this is people perceiving strengths of this economic system as weaknesses. So for example, there's no price stabilization mechanism in Steam. The price is allowed to float freely in the marketplace. That is what makes it a commodity. That instability makes it a commodity. If you want to create a commodity-backed currency, if you want to create commodity money, which is what Steam is, it has to be a commodity, and it can't have a price stabilization mechanism. It has to be allowed to go up and down in a volatile fashion. You create a thing, you produce a thing to satisfy wants and needs, and then you put it out there, and you see what people are willing to pay for it, and that enables you to go, look, it's not us saying that this thing has value, it's the market. It's a commodity. It just does have value. People still argue about why gold has value. That argument is so far from ever being resolved. People will tell you it has some kind of practical use, and then there will be just as many people on the other side saying that the practical uses are so few and far between that it's effectively irrelevant. I don't really give a shit. People believe gold has value. That's all you need to know. People have and always will believe that gold has value because it has an inherently limited supply, it's impossible to counterfeit, and it has a form factor which allows you to use it as money. But commodities are not necessarily money. In order to be money, it has to be either a thing, gold would cover this item, or just a verifiable record that's generally accepted as payment for goods and services. The vast majority of American money is digital. It's not the physical stuff we all carry around. So, right, and then you're just talking about a record a digital record of transactions, which is exactly what Steem does. And it's generally accepted as payment for goods and services. So Steem is a commodity that can be used as money, just like gold was a commodity that was used as money in the Roman Empire, in the early American nation, but it has various flaws which inevitably lead to the creation of a currency. And so the guys designing this economic system understood was that you need to design every step to serve its function. And so they didn't stop at creating commodity money. They understood that that had certain strong suits, mainly that it can be used to back a currency. Now, what's a currency? A currency is a system of money. It's not what many people, I think, tend to get a little wrapped up in, which is some sequence of bullet points, a medium of exchange, a store of value. Sure, all of that stuff is relevant, but what really matters is that it's a system of money. And that system has to have a price stabilization mechanism. When people are talking about currency as a store of value, what they're actually talking about is a consequence of a healthy price stabilization mechanism. But the US dollar is and will always be a currency, even if it ceases to be a store of value. It's just like saying an iPhone will always be a smartphone, even when technology has progressed to such a level that nobody wants to buy iPhones anymore. It was still a smartphone. The US dollar is a currency because it's a system of money. It has a price stabilization mechanism designed into it. It's the official medium of exchange for a specific population. Now, I think people tend to think of a currency as being the official medium of exchange for a specific nation. But national boundaries are fictional. They're arbitrary. If you take a population that uses a currency out of a geographical location referred to as a nation, does it still exist in that area? No, of course not. With nobody there to use it, there is no currency. Wherever that population moves, they'll take their currency with them. You know, if all Americans decided today to move to Antarctica, we wouldn't go, let's design a new currency and a new banking system. We would take the currency that we've spent decades rejiggering with us and our flawed banking system with us, because it would be the state of the art that we know, assuming that people aren't looking towards more modern, more efficient economic systems. And in the case of Steemit, that population is Steemit users, and whatever users are added in the future to any enterprise that leverages this economic system. Anybody who uses those will be part of the population, and Steem dollars will be the official medium of exchange in there. Now, this last feature goes back to the other thing I was talking about earlier, about how there seems to be a tendency for some people, especially people who aren't already part of the Steemit ecosystem, to view strengths as weaknesses in these. So, for example, when you talk about Steem dollars and you go, yeah, you can make Steem dollars and they're worth $1 US, you can cash them out for effectively a US dollar. They go, yeah, but I can't use Steem dollars on, to get the groceries and stuff. You're like, yeah, it's limited to the Steemit ecosystem as of now. And as more things come online, you'll be able to use it there. That limitation is what makes it a currency. Without the limited boundaries of acceptance, you wouldn't have a currency and you wouldn't have an economic system. You wouldn't have a monetary system. That's just kind of full stop, period. So the fact that it has limited boundaries of acceptance isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's what enables Steem dollars to actually function as a currency. Because what a currency really is it's a product that's designed to benefit a specific population. If the product benefits individuals who reside outside of that population, it's no longer serving its purpose, right? The US dollar is intended to benefit US citizens. You can participate, but you can't participate effectively in a way that hurts us, at least if the design is good. Now, it is entirely possible for economic systems to be designed in such a way that people can exploit them to the detriment of the specific population it's designed for. But a good one does not allow that. And this is a good one, because if people want to get involved with Steem dollars, there are very few ways to imagine them doing so in a way that does not benefit Steemit users. And because of that, the existence of this currency is a net positive for all Steemit users. It should, over the long run, return lots of value because it enables Steemit users to exchange products and services that create value efficiently. The last component of a healthy economic system is what I refer to as some kind of long-term investment vehicle. It's obviously not a term that I made up. That's the function that Steem Power serves. And I think the closest analogy is the United States Treasury bond, which is a long-term investment vehicle, but it's also a long-term investment in a system. That's what differentiates a government bond from something else. Although technically, if you buy a private bond, you're investing in the system of whatever corporation you're looking at. But bonds are investments in like a monetary system, in an economic system. If you believe that the American economic system is better than the Chinese, you should buy bonds. And bonds pay what's called a coupon, but it's just an interest rate. And they're very stable and they're very safe. And and they mature over a very long time. So the kind of standard treasury bond in America is the 10-year treasury. For 10 years, you will receive interest payments on that money, and then after 10 years, they will return to you the principal. Steem Power is a bit different. First of all, it's only 2 years. And that was smart because it's far more reasonable of an ask. And it has this interesting feature. They designed an interesting feature into it, which is you can start the cash out process right away. When you go to cash out of your Steem Power, you start getting monthly payments back, which is an interesting innovation beyond what a bond offers. Because with a treasury bond, you just either have to sell it or you have to wait. That obviously wouldn't be very appealing to people new to the economic system. And so they kind of compromise with, well, at least you'll get these monthly payouts. But you still have the primary incentive, which is that you are investing in the long-term success of an economic system, right? The beauty of treasury bonds is that it unites opponents. A lot of people get upset about the fact that China owns a lot of America's treasury bonds. However, it's hard to deny that the fact that they own so many treasury bonds gives them an incentive to not go to war with us, to not economically harm us, and in fact, to help us. And if we own Chinese bonds as well, which I'm pretty sure we do, we have this mutually beneficial situation. So you have this financial instrument that binds enemies together in their mutual self-interest. And that is vital to an economic system. All three phases are vital to a healthy economic system. Now, what I want to talk about is the differences in these forms of money in this investment vehicle from what we typically see in existing monetary systems. And these are differences that add value to the system. That's why they're there, because they're improvements. Steem, the commodity money, is printed by the algorithm at a regular rate so that all participants in all these markets know exactly what they're getting into. That enables the price to kind of stabilize. It decreases the risk of kind of supply-demand shocks. Like with gold, you would have a massive discovery of gold and it would destroy the economy. You would think that that would be a good thing, but it would lead to inflation and it would be a bad thing. And that's because you can find a big deposit of gold. Also, people can pull their gold out of an economy. Before the Great Depression, actually basically what triggered the Great Depression was when the economies of Europe, still reeling from the fallout of World War I, had to pull their gold out of American banks because of their own economic hardships. And when you have a currency that's backed by gold and people pull their gold out of the economy, you have to shrink the money supply. Dollars at this time were IOUs for gold. So if they lose gold, they have to stop printing as many IOUs. And now you have entrepreneurs going to bank going, hey man, I want a loan. And the bank going, we agree you're productive. We agree that your enterprise would create tons of value. We literally don't have the money to give you. And that is part of the equation that shoved America into that Great Depression, into that long, deep, horrible depression. And Steem eliminates that issue by regularly, consistently growing the money supply so that there's more and more capital available to entrepreneurs, but it's not vulnerable to shocks like that. They incorporate the money printing role that is traditionally performed by banks into the algorithm. So when you deposit money at the bank lends out 5 times as much money based on that deposit, thereby creating more money. For every dollar you put in, I forget what the exact number is, how it's governed by regulations and all that, but if you give them $1, they can give out 5 new dollars based on that dollar. And that's because that's their role. Their role is actually to print money, to add money to the money supply so that entrepreneurs who are looking for loans so that they can create enterprises which themselves create products and services that add value to people's lives. They want that capital. We all want capital to be available to those people. And so that's why banks are licensed by the Federal Reserve to print more money. Steem cuts out the middleman there. They just do it with an algorithm. That is a unique trait that is only possible since blockchain technology, since the innovation behind Bitcoin, and they were brilliant to incorporate it into Steem. Now let's look at the differences between the Steem dollar and the US dollar, and the primary one I want to focus on is that the Steem-backed dollar incorporates interest payments on the currency that is also traditionally performed by banks. So here we're cutting out the banks once again, which is brilliant from both a practical and a moral standpoint, because creating a banking system is extremely expensive and complicated and difficult. If you can accomplish the same roles that they serve without having to build them, that is going to be an order of magnitude more efficient and a boon to the economic system. The only question is whether they do it well. The question you have to ask about why we can only get interest on money that's deposited at banks is a logistical issue, right? How are they going to know how many dollars we have in our wallet and then go, hey man, you've got $10, here's an extra buck, here's your interest payment, right? We need to deposit that money there so that A, they can lend it out, and B, so that they can know how much to give us on interest. But with Steem and Steemit, they know how much money you have. They don't need the middleman, and they can deliver those interest rate payments directly to you, and that is a far better incentive for people to keep their capital in Steem dollars, right? Because with US dollars, the fact that I don't get interest on the stuff that's in my wallet means that I don't have that additional incentive to keep using US dollars. Now, Of course, there's plenty other incentives to use the US dollar, but interest on money that I hold privately outside of the banks isn't one of them. I want to finish by talking about the differences between steam power and more traditional treasury bonds. And the primary difference, the clue is in the title, steam power. There's a reason they didn't call it the steam bond. And that's because this steam power incorporates power, which is traditionally performed by a political system. In other words, in the Steemit economic system, power is tied directly to productivity. That is an insanely powerful innovation because, as I said earlier, the ideal economic system allocates resources perfectly among the population according to their productivity. That is the perfect idealized economic system. And so here we have a system that eliminates a grossly inefficient, grossly unfair political system. It just gets rid of it. And it distributes power according to productivity. Now, that might sound scary to people, but I think the key thing to understand is that power always exists in a population. There will always be powerful people. What you want is you want the people who have the most power to be the best people, the nicest people, people who are creating the most for the community, people who deliver the most value to other people within the economic system. And this is a brilliant way of accomplishing that task. In order to craft this, these guys had to have a very advanced understanding of economics, or they simply were trying to resolve problems that they saw. You know, it may very well be the case that that when they were looking at Steemit, they were looking at Bitcoin, they were looking at gold, and they were saying, okay, how can we fix that? And then they went, okay, well, what if we created a currency? That would fix some of those issues, and maybe we look at the US dollar for that. And then from there, they might have said, okay, but how do we get people to invest in the long-term growth of this enterprise? Well, why don't we create something like steam power, and we could bake in a power element to it and encourage people to leave their capital in a very long-term way in the system, as opposed to steam dollars, which is a very medium-term way of leaving your capital, right? Because it's pretty liquid. You can cash out into steam and then cash that out. How do you incentivize people to leave their capital in a system for 2 years? You create steam power. So they may have just been solving one problem after the other in a very kind of methodical way and then arrived on this structure. But that has nothing to do with the fact that what they have found here, what they have created here, is by definition an economic system. And in my opinion, it's the most efficient economic system ever created in the history of the world. It's kind of a big deal.